Yeah, welcome. I have Pat Crawley from Chapul Farms with me today on what is a better company with conscious brands. Pat, so great to see you, brother. And you're looking nice and relaxed and always have that big smile on your face.
It's good to see you, Rob. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. What's happening? What's fresh in the world of Chapul?
Yeah, we're kind of in the middle of we just pulled together a fantastic team. That's kind of one of the things that's probably makes me feel exude a little bit more relaxation. There's not as much on my plate anymore. We have a really qualified team. Just raised some money, and we're kind of full steam ahead on our vision of using insects to as a tool for regenerative agriculture and closing the loop on some of our waste streams, waste to energy streams. So, yeah.
You've kind of been this pioneer of insects. I remember we first met in Austin on that bus going to a school to install, yeah, kind of like a community garden as part of the Whole Foods program. And
Yeah, that after school program. Yeah, that was what year was that? 20,
yeah, I want to say
2015?
like 2016,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah, something like that. 2015, 2016. So yeah, it's been a while, and just kind of always admired the pioneering aspect of what you've done, and just kind of doing business in a different way and stepping out, stepping off that treadmill that is sometimes sometimes, what do I want to say here? Sometimes kind of in the as entrepreneurs, we want to step out and do things a different way, but the systems that are in place, especially when you're raising capital, you kind of get back into and onto that treadmill that is not what you're looking at doing as an entrepreneur. So I really appreciate how you've been able to do things a little bit differently.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, it's quite the dance, if you will, because you don't want to pioneer everything. You have to be like water when you need to be water and follow the paths of lesser resistance. So sometimes that means adopting antiquated infrastructure for whether that's capital markets, whether that's distribution of product, whether that's packaging, whatever that is. It always comes with a bit of pain, like, oh, this isn't the best way to do this, but to accomplish what you need to, sometimes you have to stop being a pioneer. But identifying kind of the core areas that I've always liked to get to the root of problems, not address symptoms of deeper problems, even though the symptoms can be painful. And so it's been kind of get to the core root of our civilization's ability to feed itself in the future and future generations. And so been focused on kind of those deeper elements of what are the bigger challenges to access to food in the future. But you can't do that without being a pioneer to financial systems as well. That's right there along along the lines of the carbon intensity of food production or over use of finite resources for our food. The way we the way we fund way food and agriculture, kind of that, and the long-term needs of it fit into shorter term focused capital markets needs to be radically altered as well. So I've been kind of forced into pioneerism where I didn't really anticipate it earlier. I didn't have as much background in
So, you talked about kind of a deeper why your business exists, but would you be able to summarize that in like a higher purpose statement for Chapul Farms?
Yeah. Well, the mission of Chapul Farms is to reintroduce insects to support biodiversity in agriculture for a more resilient, food secure future. And so the higher purpose is, the generations that will come after us. What do they need for survival? And so it's really, that's the core of it, is the survival of future generations.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can we solve some of the the houses of cards that we've set up for potential collapse of how we get our food may not be available to them in the future. And so how can we set them up for better infrastructure to feed themselves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So, that's a pretty noble and aspirational statement to be able to, put out into the world. How are you effectively communicating that as you start to, roll this out, bring some money into Chapul and talk to, well, and maybe we should talk about what is Chapul Farms.
Yeah. Well, the short answer is sometimes I've learned that sometimes you can accomplish your mission more effectively by not talking about it as much.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of going to the paths of lesser resistance. So communicating with people where they're at, what are their needs, and identifying those and what incentivizes them to take action that
Mm-hmm.
are on a parallel track to what your mission supports. So then kind of getting the content behind that, we're building insect farms right now at Chapul Farms. And so think that, I've been focused on insects for almost a decade now. And originally I was excited about them just from a pure resource efficiency perspective. I had a background in natural resource management, with a focus on water and how much water do we use for agriculture and how can we use less, especially when the water that we are using is coming from these finite pools of it, whether that's underground or whether that's surface water that won't be available in the same quantities in the future with the changing climate in the same areas, et cetera. But now as you peel back the layers of the onion associated with insect agriculture, it's a lot more in depth and a lot more supportive of this concept of regenerative agriculture, where it's not just about sustainability and balancing the use of resources, but repairing some of the damage done to the last several decades of particular styles of agriculture. And so where insects fit into the natural environment is there's just this incredible kind of glue to closing systems, closed loop systems, where in a forest, you have this organic material, plant-based material falling to the ground and rotting, and then they consume it. Often there's species that will consume that material, and then as it passes through the gut microbiome of the insect, they just facilitate healthy microbiological diversity within the soil. And so they're the kind of the transition layer between organic material and healthy soil in many, and an essential function. That's an essential function essential role that they play in most terrestrial ecosystems on the planet. And then they take those nutrients and they upcycle them to be edible for higher trophic layers of species. And so birds and mammals and fish. And so what we do is we mimic that as much as possible and building our insect farm. So creating a natural of environment as possible to mimic what they would be eating. And so right now we're working the species black soldier fly. And so feeding them feedstocks, feeding them feed right now in our current agricultural infrastructure that is going to waste, that's going to landfill. So how can we plug these landhold diversions using insects and then get that organic material back into the soil, much faster than some of the other alternatives available to us, industrial scaled compost or anaerobic digestion or some of the other tools we have. Insects are just this incredible, technology that's been in development for hundreds of millions of years.
So are you patenting your insects in order to make the most efficient and
are we what?
Or patenting?
No, we're not. We're not patenting. We're just using. We're dancing the dance with evolution, and you have insects turning over every generation on a scale of weeks, and so what we are learning some things about how these various species evolve based on their diet. And so diet-based gene expression and you are what you eat is a concept, not only for humans, but insects as well. And so it's not a patent-based strategy to leverage this. It's more of a co-evolution with other species around us on the planet, because we view it as a 180-degree turn from the direction we're on with the loss of biodiversity on this planet. But how can we actually have more of a symbiotic relationship with the other species on this planet, and add them back into agriculture, as opposed to view entire species of insects as a pest and then eradicate them from the planet.
Yeah, no, I love where you're going with this, and a couple of things. There is that pest side, and anytime we spray pesticides on the field, we're not just killing the pest, but we're killing the predators as well. And it's just a very negative way to go about it. So just to understand, you're bringing in a feedstock and growing insects on this feedstock. What happens to those insects? Are they turned into the Chapul protein bars that were out there, or what's happening with them?
Yeah, maybe one day. Right now, the impact, that the role that insects have to play, and the positive beneficial impacts that they have the potential to have in our agricultural landscape is larger than what the protein bar market will support at this stage. So what the larvae are going into are aqua feed and pet food most significantly, but then also feeding them to chickens and wild birds. But those are the pet food and aqua feed markets are the ones supporting the growth of insect agriculture today. And so on the aquaculture side, that's the fastest growing food production system on the planet. I think it was 2019 where the planet started consuming more farmed fish than wild caught fish for the first time in human history. And there's no turning back. But what are we feeding these fish that we're farming? And so one of the reasons why insects are being looked at as one of the highest potential alternative feeds to support the growth of aquaculture is because they have a similar amino acid profile of ocean caught herring and anchovies and what's known as fish meal more broadly. So that's a premium feed ingredient that we harvest out of the ocean to then support farmed fish, which just doesn't make any sense at the scale that the population is growing, or even at the scale of population we have today. And so we're looking at insects as a replacement for wild caught fish meal, and especially for species to support species of fish that, like trout, for example, 70% of their diet in the wild is comprised of insects. And so it's just this kind of we dance the dance of radical new innovation technology, but also the front edge of epigenetics and diet-based gene expression, but also like so common sense.
Yeah, it is common sense. And like I just in my head, I'm mentally calculating all the positive impact that you have. So one, you're taking waste stream that would otherwise go to landfill, feeding to insects. Those insects are substituting, fish that would otherwise be fed to other fish to grow that protein in aquaculture, or fish that would be otherwise used for pet food. And now that's allowing these larger ecosystems of oceans to heal because you've diverted this. And I remember a while ago, you shared a statistic that for every pound of farm fish, it requires how many pounds of kind of input from ocean fish?
Yeah, I think the global number is somewhere around 4 pounds, depending
4
on
pounds.
Yeah, 4 pounds of ocean caught fish are required for 1 pound of farm fish. That's specific to salmon industry.
So yeah, a 4-to-1 calorie input. And then, we look at how dead the oceans are getting. So you're really you have a whole bunch of positive impacts, kind of the truest case of regenerative that.
Yeah, we put together a graphic showing, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and just how many insects touch on it just goes on and on from there. The water quality, in recirculating aquaculture systems. This is kind of more, the animal health and
Mhm.
welfare of the fish. They're just a lot healthier when you feed them a diet that they evolved eating. But if you feed them soy and even algae, often they basically have diarrhea, and then that just goes into our rivers and oceans, and uh, massive amounts of downstream negative effects associated with that. Here in the U.S., we have some 70,000 water bodies with excess nitrogen in them. So,
So you're getting these huge algae blooms because of the nitrogen.
yeah,
And
and that's multiple inputs to that. Whether
yeah,
that's
not just the
mammalian agriculture, but that is one of the biggest challenges of aquaculture as it's looking to scale as this food source of the future. The water quality is a massive component of it.
Mhm. And the other thing, one of the other things that you mentioned was just you are what you eat. So, if the quality of the input to the fish for aquaculture is better, that's actually going to make a healthier protein that people will consume. So yeah, just
Yeah.
multiple benefits.
We see
So here,
we see that in we see that in the poultry side, especially the growth of the backyard chicken farming market is really fascinating. It's one of those, I forget that terminology for it, but that market increases in times of economic instability and
yeah.
political election cycles, and it's supported by people wanting to take back their food system, and they're willing to pay extra for insects to feed their chickens because they know that they're going to be eating the egg, and so they're more hyper focused on what they feed their animal, because they are the direct consumer of that end product. So
Yeah. So here's a question. I mean, the last couple of years have been pretty crazy, and we're navigating a new world. What do you think leaders need to let go of the past to better navigate their path forward?
um, a concept of normal, and like going back to
Yeah.
viewing this as a temporary, um, yeah, the wake of the pandemic as being temporary. This destabilization of global supply chains is, I think, more of that to come.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I don't think we should fool ourselves about how static the future could possibly be. Where the climate is changing, and it's going to
Hmm.
radically alter our global food supply chains. The yeah, I don't want to be a doomsday sayer, but there's a lot more instability to come from a natural resource perspective alone, and that's kind of my area of expertise. But then diving into what the outlook is for our soil health, it's not looking good. Looking at antimicrobial resistant bacteria, the outlook for that, killing more people than cancer by 2050. I don't know. This pandemic might just be a taste of the absolute necessity for adaptation in the future in front of us, and it doesn't have to be as scary as it potentially can be, but it's
Hmm.
just let go of normal. We need to move forward with the cards in our hand at this point, and they're not the same cards that our parents were holding.
So if we need to let go of normal, what and that is like it's a pretty big thing for a lot of people. And then what is normal? That's
Mhm.
a whole other question. But the question I have to ask for, if we're letting go of normal, what do you think's waiting to emerge? As leaders kind of step up and do the type of work that you're doing, Pat, with you know, be building better companies.
Yeah, I think a lot of the resistance to pioneering just comes from momentum,
Hmm.
in opposite direction, even though it may not be logical. Even feed harvesting 4 pounds of ocean sea life and feeding it, that's not logical. Like that's clearly there's a dead end path to that, but there's just so much momentum to that infrastructure that's in place. And so um I think that's an enormous like breath of fresh air for the ability to pioneer new paths forward. So whether that's new form of distribution of food and product. Um, Maybe we have a lot of momentum in certain directions that can be toppled, or just an immense amount of opportunity for an uprising at kind of that entrepreneurial innovation mindset, because everything is open for disruption, everything right now, and that's where, I mean, that's where a big light of optimism can be shined upon. Is wow, like what an incredible opportunity our generation has to just reinvent everything.
Mhm.
What an honor we have.
So I love that, and not to put a whole bunch of hopium into the world, but I like that we have this opportunity. Like we have a real amazing opportunity. I find it so fascinating to be alive right now and feel like, you know, this is the right place and time for me to be, and with everything that's going on. And I think it's easy to get kind of bogged down with all the, general narrative in the world about how messed up everything is. But I think we need to kind of accept that things are messed up in order to move forward with it all.
Well said. Well said. And yeah, that acceptance is it's easier said than done, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
But because it's daunting. Yeah, but that's very well said. I think I managed to do that from operating kind of outside of traditional walls of security, quote unquote security, or what our culture is kind of deemed secure. And so I've been able to accept that and see that, uh, perhaps through an easier lens to view than others. But at this point, I think that's the challenge at hand, is coming to acceptance and then moving forward.
Yeah. So, this whole idea of like building a better company, and, and maybe it's not even just a better company. It's just, yeah, well, maybe it is a better company, because I think the way that capitalism has been going, and we've heard about sustainability, we've heard about purpose driven, we've heard about all these things, and they seem to kind of get co-opted or washed out. And, people say that they're this and maybe they're not. But, what advice would you give a new startup, kind of entering into the world of entrepreneurialism right now? Like what sort of advice would you give?
Yeah, this is advice that I feel like I heard from day one, but it took me, almost a decade to actually fully realize. But like, just surrounding yourself with the right people. And so there's a lot of really intelligent people out there, and a lot of really passionate people. But if you are a mission-driven company, you're having to surround yourself with people with a similar mission to your own,
Mm-hmm.
or that you'd like to set your company on a path towards. Because once you have that mission alignment, then that's the foundation. If you have the mission alignment with your team, with your investors, then you have significantly empowered yourself and your company and your mission ultimately. Because it's, you can burn, your own passion and your own candle to support a mission, but then, it's not going to amount to nearly as much as if you have, you start multiplying that. And so I think that's the biggest step, is getting the people to support that mission and buy it as their own, and having them come to the table with that sense of, they're aware of the problems. You have to sell the problem before you sell the solution. And so, you need people that are aware of the problems and aren't just kind of dipping their toe into it for the first time, I think.
Mm-hmm, for sure. One of our guiding principles at Conscious Brands has been, go fast alone or go further together, that African proverb. And really, I love the idea of going further together with those people that get that there is a way forward, right? And not that, I mean, there's some branches in the road that maybe you have to move or you have to take a bit of a detour, but there is a path forward if you know what that mission is, that path that you're on, I guess. Yeah.
Another one that helps, and I don't know I don't know if this would have sunk in with me at the early stages. I saw a quote I had kind of in the early days of Chapul, like I would say, I know I'm 5 to 10 years too early for this. Like I know that, but I don't think I conceptualize what 5 to 10 years of this would be like from a personal level. But a quote that really sunk in was, you can most people overestimate what they're going to be able to accomplish in a year, but underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. And
You know, that's so crazy. I was just going to say that same quote.
wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It rings true. It's easier for me to realize that now, 9 years in, and looking back, like, oh, actually, we have done a lot. But that sense, yeah. If I don't know that that would have given me more patience or like
Mhm.
helped with the grit that was necessary to be in it for the long haul, but whatever it is, whatever quote, whatever it is, to frame your view of being in it for the long haul, but having that sense of urgency at the same time, um, figuring out what it takes to accomplish kind of both of those ends of an urgency, but also the grit to withstand the marathon.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. You know, it is a practice. Like all this work is a practice. It's not that you're going to run that marathon um, today. You know, you have to do some training. You start by walking around the block, and then kind of build it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and have some friends that are training as well. Yeah, and advisors and people that have mentors, I guess, that have run the marathon before. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, Pat, I know that you're running a couple marathons, more than once a week too. So it's so great to catch up and see what's fresh in your world and fresh in the world of well, maybe just fresh in the world of Chapul. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good to see. I wish we were seeing each other, you having ridden your bike to my house again, but across the country to get there. But this will have to do for now. And then
this will have to do
the,
for now. Well, we
the
were
new
planning
normal of more cycling will foster that reunion, hopefully sooner rather than later.
yeah, for sure. Well, it will be happening. I can guarantee you that. So great seeing you, brother, and
Yeah, good to see you
all
as
the
well.
success. Yeah, ciao.